All right. I sent out all the things. Oh, here we are. How's it going? Zipper doesn't want to work. Hey, hey. Let's see. What are we doing today? Uh, test this out here. Yeah, that works. So we're doing some office hours today. Uh, Basically, if you have some questions, you wanted to get some advice on how to do something in Hyper, or you wanted to figure out how to contribute, or um, just chat. We can do Hyper or like Tokyo or async stuff. Really, kind of anything. While I wait for people to pile in, I figure I might do some house cleaning. I was gonna do a release today. Let's see. Yeah. All right. So while I wait for some questions or anyone to show up, I'm just gonna go ahead and put out release candidate 3. I think it's ready to go. Computer feels slow as it's capturing, but that's cool. That's not what I'm looking for. Mm, well, that should be expected. I think my mouse finally died. Oh, there it is. And of course, I can't do anything because I haven't learned how Twitch Studio works. That's cool. Um, oh, you can't delete chat. All right. Anyways, I'm going to mute my phone. And so I see a few people are showing up. Like I said, this is office hours. If you want to ask me anything about Hyper, you have a question, you couldn't get something to work, you're trying to upgrade to Hyper 1.0's release candidates, you're trying to make your app work, you're using Request or Warp or Axum or just Tokyo, anything like that, just drop it in the chat and we'll try to help you out. And in the meantime, I'm trying to put out release candidate 3 here. So let's go ahead and prepare the change. Oh, right. Changelog doesn't like RC versions. Well, I'll fix that at some point. But, so there's that. How's it going, Corey? Corey Ja? Thanks for coming to hang out. What do you work on? Let's go on Scientific. Yeah, you can ask a simple REST question. So why does joining threads in thread local hang? Do you have a larger example? Maybe something like they could go in a GitHub gist.github.com. Oh, cool. You do have an example. Let's find out. Why does this hang? I don't know. My poor little laptop is not liking streaming and doing anything else at the moment. Okay. Got a thread local. This hangs. Where dropping foo joins on the thread. Interesting. And you put foo into a thread local. Huh. Well, that's interesting. I'm a Rails dev by profession. Rust web dev in the free time. Cool. Open API stuff. That's cool. Yeah, that's how I got into Rust actually. I was a Node.js backend developer and wanted to write Rust instead. So eventually, here we are. But why does this hang? I don't know. You have some. I mean, oh, you're one of those people. Let's find out. Um, let's just throw this in. I don't know. Call it thread local, right? And no. Do that yet. Yeah, it's fine. Oh, that felt slow. Okay. I don't think we need this to be a test, right? Does it need to? Is it specifically only in unit tests? What if I use? What if I make this main? Well, then what happens? What? Hi. Does this work? Did you look at that? It works. Well, okay. Let's try the test thing. But it also could just be that you're one of those people on Windows. How do you run tests in an example? Can you? I don't know. I don't need cargo. Um, how do you do it again? The test? Hey, it is. And where'd that go? There it is. Hey, everything works. Sorry, that's the most not helpful response. But it could be Windows. That could be the reason. Uh, I don't really have a way to answer you. I mean, I am on Windows, but I don't have Rust set up to run on Windows, so I can't really do anything for you there. I'm sorry. I mean, it sounds like it's something along the lines of the what is the thread? A thread spawn. So it's not the same thread. Um, yeah, that would have been my first thought, is if you're sticking the same thread into a thread local and trying to drop, and it's joining, and so it's forever stuck on trying to drop itself. I don't know. Well, sorry I couldn't help. This one I don't know. Anyways, let's get rid of that. Oh, not quite. Yeah, so welcome everyone to office hours. If you have a question about Hyper or async Rust, HTTP, Tokyo, futures, just go ahead and toss it in the chat and we can debug it. And while I wait for that, I've been trying to put together release. And now I remember what I'm going to do. I'm just going to, oh wait, yeah. Grab that. And then, can you give me some ideas to improve my skills? I imagine you're talking about using Rust, in which case, if you've gone through the Rust book, that's a fantastic first step. What is that book about Rust thing? Poor computer. No, that's not it. Learn. This is a great site right here. Come here to learn. You can read the book. Rust things can be helpful. Rust by example is also super helpful. If you haven't done these, then if you're trying to skip them, then you're doing yourself a disservice. This would be a great way to learn. Yeah. All right. Just kill some things. Okay. What are we doing? I'm setting the change log because that generated way too much stuff. Yeah. So what's the TLDR of what's new in Hyper 1.0? So we're doing great. I go here to 1.0. And check the project out. And so there's a few things that are like blockers, things that need to get done because they changed the API or whatever. Even TLS is slow. And I'm mostly throwing those kind of blockers into the RC section. And I'm about to cut RC3 maybe at some point. Oh, my computer is only 6 years old. I thought it'd be a little able to handle this. My stream before, it's not been so bad. Anyways, but there's other things in here at util. Like most of these aren't blockers. They're basically like things that kind of were in Hyper originally and would be useful for people, but them not existing doesn't mean we can't stabilize the core. But we have some progress here. Last week where is it? This one? Oh, clicking things is bad. But anyways, ported the higher level pooling client over to Hyperutil. I think that was probably like the biggest blocker for people being able to try out the RCs, because many people that I would talk to, they were like, I'd ask them like, hey, do you want to try this out? Oh yeah, sure. And then immediately, oh, but we use the client pool and that doesn't exist, and that's the biggest headache right now. So I think this existing, where you can now use Hyperutil, it's not published yet, but you can use it from GitHub and use Hyper 1.0's RCs in a pool, and then have kind of like the same experience that you could in 0.14. I think that's the biggest thing. This finished last week, so a couple of other smaller pieces in Hypercore that I'm going to publish now, so that way the util doesn't need to depend on Git; it can depend on the actual RC3. And then I think that's that was the blocker, and for a lot of people, and that'll enable a lot of things. Apart from that, there's, I want to say, one other kind of breaking change-ish thing, which is around Tokyo's I/O traits. Basically, if Hyper should continue to require them, or if we should define our own trait. And I think answering that, and then poking around to see if we can do a security review. I think people would appreciate that if we made sure that there's no obvious whoopsies. Then I think we can just mark it 1.0 and just keep chugging away on utils. That's kind of a recap on the 1.0 progress. Risto India, I don't know if this falls into the request topic, but are there any plans for the bytes crate? There's a lot of PRs. There are a lot of PRs. Bytes. So what's the status of bytes? Being only one of the maintainers, I haven't asked the other people, but I can tell you what I think. Bytes currently works for a lot of circumstances, and so I think that's why we haven't, the few of us that kind of maintain it haven't done a lot more work on it, because it does everything we need. And everyone that is tagged up to maintain it is busy with other stuff, like Turmoil, or I'm doing Hyper 1.0, or there's Axum work to do. So while there are PRs piling up, none of us really have the time to dedicate to reviewing. Reviewing takes a lot of time, actually. One day I'll finally publish a blog post about that. And the biggest help that anyone could do, instead of sending PRs, is to just take a look at the current review queue and help us to review. I think many people don't realize how helpful reviewing in other repos PRs would be. I can blurb on that in a little while, but the real Technitos, do you expect utils to continue to grow? Do you expect to pull out parts into their own crates? Well, yes. I expect util to, I don't expect it to contain every single possible utility under the sun, if that's what you mean. But I expect that util is also a place where we don't have to mark it 1.0, because ideally most of the types aren't things that you like put as public in your API. They're just like little things you put inside, like request could use util internally for the pool, but it is needed to show that it's using the util pool, right? And so it can make changes, and yeah, it works and other stuff, exactly. But also the idea is that as things see some usage in hyperutil, ideally we can eventually be certain, okay, this is finally where it needs to be, it's solid, now we can move that back into hypercore. A lot of the things that were punted to util were things that were seeing enough change, they didn't feel stable enough to stabilize. But I certainly expect other crates to exist that add on extras. I can't imagine every single use case that would ever exist, so I don't want to maintain every single use case. I can't. I don't have the time. Um, yeah. So thanks for the questions. It was really nice. Let's see if we can. I'm gonna keep moving forward on publishing a release. Reviewing other repositories as a non-maintainer is an interesting idea. It's not really clear if such is wanted. Uh, so it is wanted. I think it's wanted. I can't speak for all maintainers. Um, but when I have way too many PRs to keep track of, and someone comes in, I guess what you might be hinting at is that you don't know if you can say like, yes, we'll definitely merge this, because you can't say that because you're not maintaining the repo, right? But being able to check, hey, the tests work, this has tests, is it documented? Being able to check the current repo and seeing like, wow, I don't think the maintainers would ever want this because they've been going in a different direction. Um, Showing up and being like, this part was confusing to me, so it might be confusing to other people. We might be able to make it less confusing. Those are all things that a maintainer has to do when they're reviewing it, and it can take time. If it's a super tiny change, 5-10 minutes, But if it's um, but larger PRs, with tens or hundreds of lines of changes, that can take 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. And if I've got a whole pile of them, I don't have time and also time to then make progress, right? So if people can help in that way, that's like almost just as valuable, maybe even more valuable than submitting some code. Because submitting some code, then it's kind of an obligation for the maintainer to then go and review the code, right? But if you show up and do a lot of the review work for the maintainer, then that, to me, usually appreciated. Let's see. Race condition in Windows. Yeah, yeah. Sounds like it's just because you're one of those people living in Windows. Sorry about that. Um, all right. Oh, no, 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 that's not what we wanted. Um, that's what we wanted. Just wanted the changelog from RC3, right? Okay. And now we're good to go, right? Just have this and that change. Cool. But yeah, thanks all for coming to hang out. If anyone has any questions about Hyper roadmap or trying to use Hyper in your project or something like that, happy to answer any questions. And in the meantime, I'm just going to try and get a release out slowly. This is RC3. Now let's let CI yell at me. Oof, 0.11. How old is that? Uh, like 3 or 4 years? Yeah, I can imagine that would be something to struggle. That would be struggling. You consider the body types and related like full to be in the not super stable category. Well, like full and stuff. The thing is that they're fairly new. We had the idea that maybe it'd be good to break out. So originally in 0.14 and the previous versions before that, body was this mega type that could do full bodies and streams and channel and so forth. And we thought that it might be better if the default type wasn't that, but that instead you could say in the type system, hey, I only want to be able to, pass into here full bodies, right? Or like this is only going to return a full body, it's never going to return a string body. How's it going, programmatic? Um, yeah. The toughest part is to understand what's async and not. Yeah, especially if you haven't used async before. Async in Rust is fun. But back to the body stuff. Um, so I mean, part of it is that like it's not necessarily stuck to only hyper. So we have the whole HTTP body crate. Theoretically, someone could say, hey, I'm generic over an implementation. I only need to care about HTTP requests and a certain kind of body, but I don't care if hyper or any other implementation is what's actually driving the things. So that's why it's in a separate crate. Um, but also they are new, and there's questions about like defaults. The default error type, on the one hand, a full body is never going to error, but on the other hand, if you're combining it with types that do error, then you have to map the error type. Um, maybe that explicitness is good. Maybe it's just too much of a speed bump. Uh, those are questions that we don't have answers to yet. So it doesn't really hurt to allow it to bake, and then if it's certain, then we can move it into something more stable. Mm, prepare. Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. Technitos, I hope it's more flexible. That was the goal, was to recognize the parts that were inflexible and try and make them be more bendable, be able to bend it into more locations. While at the same time, if we have this util thing and guides, make it easy for people who still don't, people who are doing the more common use cases. Um, I think that'll be a lot more the progress this year, is fleshing out the utils. I'd love to make the pool um, a lot more generic. The current pool basically just has all its internals exposed right now in utils, but I think that it could be a lot better. We could make it generic over probably tower services in general. And I mean, I think I made an issue about this, right? Mm, yeah, decompose the current client and its pool into like actual modular pieces, and then that way, like request can grab each of these things, and that's a good way for most people to use it. But then someone who's doing a very specific kind of client, I don't know, the AWS SDK or Fuchsia or whatever, um, can like grab the pieces that it wants and be like, actually, we never want to do this layer, so just chop it out, right? That's the goal. Hmm. I had another activity that I was kind of expecting to do while waiting for questions today. There's the tech and power benchmarks, and I got pinged like the end of last week that the hyper benchmark is currently failing. So I was like, oh, perfect. I know it's using like Hyper 012 or something, or 011. I don't remember. I was like, that'd be a great thing to just show like porting over. Um, but someone else beat me to it this morning. I woke up and there was a PR already fixing it. Like, oh, okay. I mean, I'm not going to complain that someone helped me out. But now what do I do? I mean, I'm always happy to answer people's questions. Do you have any questions about how to use Hyper or any other async thing? How's it going, programmatic? I think I said hi, but if no one else has questions, are you planning on retiring anything having to do with Hyper and TLS? What do you mean by retiring? Um, like closing out some of the Hyper TLS stuff? Uh, Not sure what you mean. Um, Delegating to Tokyo TLS. I mean, sure. Uh, the Hyper TLS crate was basically just hey, people want to do TLS. Here's an easy way to do it. But then there's like Hyper OpenSSL, Hyper Native TLS, Hyper Russells that are all better. Um, so I haven't really gone back to making Hyper TLS do anything different because it seemed like there were already better options. I mean, maybe we could in the guide, the TLS guide actually, we could probably point that out. Like, hey, there are better options. Maybe I don't know. Good question. Uh, could open up a discussion on the repo if you wanted. Should we cheat the benchmark by using multiple single-threaded Tokyo runtimes? Why do you ask should? Because we already are. That's exactly what we're doing. There is there's a single-threaded runtime per thread, just like every single other benchmark there. So I wouldn't say that we're cheating. We're doing what every single other benchmark is doing. Not that I think that that's the wisest thing to do in real life. You very rarely have servers where the workload is exactly the same for every single request. And so you can end up with lopsided threads. That's why work stealing runtimes exist. And they're going to be safer for your long tail. But in a benchmark that is simply asking, hey, give me hello world as fast as you possibly can, well, okay. The numbers aren't that useful. The benchmark isn't that useful, but some people want to see it, so it's there. Yeah, no problem, Risto. Happy to do these kinds of things. It's kind of fun. Uh, I've done it internally at my work at AWS, and it's been nice. So I figured it'd probably be cool to hear what people outside of my employer are doing. I might eventually set up some sort of. There's a problem with my microphone. Is it hard to hear me? Um, it became gargling the last few minutes. I mean, that could be Bluetooth being dumb. That is weird. Let me. I think my computer is so unhappy trying to use my camera and record the screen and transmit. It's taking forever to load the audio settings window, which is sad. I don't want to think about having to buy a new computer. but maybe if I disconnect and reconnect my headphones. Reconnected. Well, I don't know. It's fixed. That's it. All you got to do is pull the cable and plug it back in again. The wireless cable. Let me see here. You said what was going on? Haven't checked the code recently. Yeah, I mean the code hadn't been touched in years, and it's just been touched this morning. So I don't remember what we were talking about, but look at that. We're green. Cool. Um, so I can just push out RC3 at this moment, but I'm also here to answer any of your questions. If you want to discuss an issue that you're trying to do with Hyper, um, but let's go. Let's say you were writing an API for requesting and receiving a response with Hyper. Okay. Yes. Let's say you were. Will Hyper 1.0 wait for Tower Service 1.0? Probably not. I don't think Hyper is going to depend on Tower Service because we probably want async event and trait to do Tower Service. And will that happen this year? I don't know. Playing team members tell me yes, but that has also been the answer for the past couple of years. So I I don't want to make Hyper 1.0 wait on that. What am I doing? Master. 1.0 RC3. Gotta go publish. Let's go. Okay, right. So you were saying making an API, receiving requests. You make a struct that had data like base path, user agent, client. Would it be wrong to make the input block of the struct use async functions? Because then I would have issues with passing self. So is it wrong for your? Yeah, you could use arc. Yeah, that's the thing with async fn. You then capture um, ampersand self or ampersand mute self, whatever the receiver function is on the function. Um, return the box future, and I'm guessing that the future did not actually need to call self, right? You probably did self dot base path something, got a function or got a value, and then put it inside of a function, not a function, a future. Is that right? Doesn't implement send sync. Um, what are the types? Okay. Um, well, RC3 is now published. We'll get around to making the GitHub tag. No, no problem. No, that's why we're here. But if you have some code that you like to throw into a gist or something, we can debug it together. Last I tried to integrate hyperservice with current tower servers requires some trickery. What trickery was that? I don't think trickery should be required. Or GATS. All right, let's go ahead and make the tag. Yeah, programmatic. I'm not sure what trickery you were thinking of, or what GATS you were using. Maybe so that way you could do both pull ready and then call. Was that what it is? Pull ready and then call. Yeah. Uh, mhm. Forgot to create a new branch. Interesting. I think my computer is trying to turn into a aircraft carrier. Fan's ready to. Sounds like it's ready for blast off or something. Um, yeah, I think if you, I still don't think that um, gas should be necessary. It might be easiest to work with cloning the service, and then you can pull ready and then call. Not all services are easily cloned, but uh, things look different. It's not what I wanted, but it's what we'll have to use. Okay, sure. Generate some release notes that I'll delete immediately. But it includes new contributors, which is nice. Hyper won't create two futures at the same time. You mean it won't create another future while another one is being awaited? That is true if it's HTTP2, because you could have multiple requests at the same time. All right, Felix, you got a gist or something? All right, let's take a look at this. Just a second. No. Pre-release. Just Firefox, you can do it. Old API, new API. Async trait. Yeah, makes sense. So IDK, I'm guessing this is where the issue is. Default API client. What's in default API client? Oh, let's see. Yeah, I couldn't use concat anymore, right? You could use, and you're using it already, 2 bytes. So looking at this, what might not be send/sync? Oh, maybe this. Borrow suggests to me that you're using refcell. Refcell is definitely not send sync. Well, I guess refcell is send, but it's not sync. So well, where do you use where is configuration used? Here to make the user agent. Oh, it also owns a client. Okay. Doesn't look like you mutated anywhere. I'm guessing somewhere else can hot mutate the config. Yeah, I assume the error is this, that configuration is a ref cell. And so that's not going to be sync. Do you need to be able to mutate it in a ampersand self situation? Could you get rid of the ref cell part and just make it be configuration? Programmatic, what's the I'll get back to that in just a moment. No, I think you could just have default API client own like self-dot configuration. Could be what do I do? How do I edit this? How do I edit the gist? Look at it type so slowly. I just have this. Oops. I said just do this, when clearly I have no idea how your system actually works, but basically this is what's causing you problems. And maybe just this is enough. Or maybe you need to mutate it elsewhere. If you do, maybe you can just do, well, that doesn't make any sense. You probably have like RC ref cell. If you don't have an RC there, then there shouldn't be any reason you need the ref cell either. But if you have RC ref cell, and it turns out that you need to update then you could just change this to arc mutex. Okay, so suggestions on how to solve the pull ready then call problem. I don't remember what the error is. Does this include a message of the error? I see. Yeah, you clone the service in order to call service.ready. Yeah. Yeah, that's a problem with async functions. I was talking to Nico about that a couple of weeks ago. That because there could be multiple services in the way, so there being like amp mute means that calling a future on an async function, you basically lock it. Which might not be what is wanted. Or it might be that clone is the answer. We also discussed that. If it's RC, Arc should do it. Yeah, you don't need a mutex unless you're mutating it somewhere. If configuration is only set at like the start of the program and it never changes, then you don't need a ref cell or a mutex. But if you want, I don't know, for someone to be able to change the configuration mid-program run, then you'll need it. It's hard to know. We're just guessing at how your program might look. Mm. But yeah, I mean, maybe putting it in a buffer, the tower buffer, that way you can clone and then do this. That might be what is needed. Ooh, what is this? Arc mutex option. That's interesting. Uh, second future called before first finished. That sounds like it'll break. Oh no, wait, HTTP1. No, that won't break. But if it were HTTP2, it would. Buffer does come with a little bit of overhead, yeah. Generated with Swagger. Yeah, I don't know anything about that. Other than I know that it generates code from an open API thing, but yeah, programmatic, I know what you mean. Um, the the whole accept thing was hard. There's the trait accept, and it turns out that there's a lot of problems with it, which is why we booted it. Uh, it might just be one of the things that is, thanks to the way Rust type system works, might just be a little bit too more complicated than it's worth than to just ask people to, hey, just run a for loop, or a while loop. But yeah, it would be a very good idea to upgrade from 0.11 because that is no longer supported. When did that even come out? How do you even check? I don't remember. Uh, all this JavaScript. Um, versions. Hey. HP body still RC2 probably. I don't think anything changed in HP body. So I think everything just works. Oh, come on, Firefox. Here we go. The last 0.11 release, almost 5 years ago. I would get off that. Yes. Yeah, they don't. I don't see the need to publish an RC3 of HP body if nothing's really changed. I mean, I can, but I don't think it helps anyone. Weird hangs you have with Firefox. Yeah, it's Firefox normally fine. My computer is just old. When I get it? 2017, 2023. But I don't want to spend the money to buy something because I don't stream all the time. If I streamed all the time, then maybe. But this is like a very rare time when, which is weird because Twitch Studio says that it's only using 40% of my CPU, but I don't know. But there you go, Felix. 40%. I mean, I've got a little thin laptop that only has, what does it have? 4 cores, maybe? I don't know. What I meant to say was 4%. Yes. Oh, GitHub was okay, but crates.io was apparently a hard thing to load. A quick and dirty solution to pass the audit. Well, you could just keep fixing whatever the compiler says to fix until it works. That's actually how I do a majority of my coding. Um, it works. When I ported over the client from Hyper 014 into Hyperutil, I basically just copied the file over and then spent the next 15 hours fixing a list of errors until it got to 0. And then it was like, oh, now I'm in the next pass and there's 80 more errors. Okay, that was my life for a couple of days. But once it finally all passed, it just works. If it passes, it works. Yep, just like that programmatic. The errors have gotten a lot better. One of the tricks is usually to scroll up to the top and see what the first couple of errors are, because sometimes fixing that one, like the rest of the errors are basically like, oh, I couldn't parse anything because I couldn't parse the first thing, right? So if you fix the one thing, then sometimes you just wipe out like 80 errors at once. Anyways, what were we doing? That's right. We published this. Cool. Uh, and we saw that it was there, right? It's.io. I forgot that we just pointed out that it was not happy in my current computer. Ooh. What are we doing? Yeah. I mean, it's very easy to, you know, uh, be like the dog, like, what squirrel? Ball. Um, when someone comments in chat, you're like, I completely forgot what I was doing because there was another human that spoke to me. It's like people want to return to office. You can experience that right now. Just start streaming. Uh, hmm, yeah, I've been remote for ever since 2011, I think. So 12 years. I can't imagine going back into an office. That's that is something that I have wondered a bit too, programmatic. Should experienced contributors leave easy issues to newcomers? I have at times sometimes felt like when I've written up an easy issue, like I probably could have fixed it faster than it took for me to write up all the mentoring instructions. Um, but the point of doing so is to try and help other people on board and realizing that, if I do everything, then when I get hit by a bus, no one else is doing anything. So I see it as investing in the stability of the crate by making those easy ones. And I leave them for a while, and then sometimes, eventually it's just, well, I need to ship, uh, you know, an RC or something, and no one has wanted to pick up that easy one. Okay, fine, I'll do it. Do real quick and work it. Hey, welcome back. Crates.io. Um, so I waffle between letting other people try them, but maybe it'd be good to post like the easy issues in like the this week in Rust. That might be smart. I'm sure there's a lot of things that are smart that I don't do. Um, but at the same time, having some momentum is also good too, especially if the easy task blocks other tasks. Sometimes it's just worth it to just unblock the rest of the task. Yeah. Started working from Europe over the holidays. I'm not sure what you mean. Like you went to Europe during the holidays and started doing some work, and then you had to go back into the office because the holidays ended. Cool. Yeah, that's always fun to be able to. A, a digital nomad visa. Is that a thing? Or is that just Countries offering digital nomad visas. Huh, that's interesting. Is it like a extended tourist visa that allows you to work, I guess, for a company that is not in the country? Because I mean, technically, when you go to another country, you're not supposed to, some companies are very strict about this. You can't bring your laptop, you can't do work while you're visiting another country for a conference or whatever, even though visiting the conference is work. Uh, but yeah, so I'm guessing this visa is to like try and fix that. Like, yeah, you're here as kind of a tourist, but it's okay that you're working. That's cool. Yeah. Um, they want IT people. What do they want about them specifically? Is it that they stay home and don't use up the traffic, or that they assume that they will spend their revenue in that country, I guess? Yeah. I do hope to have these kinds of office hours in the future. I was thinking maybe every 2 weeks. Yeah, I could do every week maybe, but I was also thinking that maybe I kind of want to stream something frequently. I think office hours is a good thing. Um, here's my notes. I had some notes on my thoughts on what to talk about. Uh, I was thinking of office hours where people ask me questions like this. I was thinking probably even make some sort of like sign up sheet, maybe a GitHub issue, GitHub repo where like you could file an issue and therefore you could claim like a 10-minute slot and we could work through like a serious issue, which is what I've done with internal office hours for work. Um, I've thought of doing like co-working. A few weeks ago, I spent some time on stream debugging an issue in Curl's integration with Hyper. That seemed kind of cool. I've thought of maybe doing some triage, going through issues, tagging them, um, maybe reviews. I don't know about reviews. Like at the same time, is it weird to critique someone's code live in front of other people? Maybe that's weird. I'm not sure. Um, yeah, that's true. People do kind of have random things. I know there are people that have issues. Sometimes companies are afraid to bring their issues publicly. Like they want like a private office hours because their code is private, or they don't want to admit that they're having a certain bug in their system. Um, I've also considered maybe doing some sort of like teaching stream. I have a couple of topics here. Uh, how to how to use the retry budget in Tower, like why you'd even want to, what it's good for, how it works, that sort of thing. Or I also have in this list explain how the HList thing works in Warp. I know a few people have thought that it was kind of magical. I kind of stole a lot of it from Frank, but made it work for Warp. Um, I considered I have here write a routing guide for the Hyper website. Because a lot of people show up to the chat and wonder, how do I do routing? I don't want to full crate. I don't want Axum or Tower Web or whatever. I just want routing. Maybe that would be something to do. Yeah, an internal stream. That could be cool. I have a pile of half to three quarters written blog articles that I never finished about, like how do we do vectored writes and how do we do the adaptive reading thing and so forth. Maybe it's just instead of just never publishing them, maybe it'd be fun to talk through them in a stream instead. Help people get better at Rust. Maybe help people learn how to contribute. I don't know. Yeah, Rocky said I don't think that's bad, and I already dropped the context of what that answer was too. But oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Not to critique someone's code in public. Yeah, I mean, especially if I apply my own guidelines to be kind. Um, but I could see how someone might not want to have their code reviewed publicly. And again, it's the pull requests are all public. That's probably fine. Um, let's see, something like steer and box services for routing. Best answer would probably be just use Axon. Yeah, more than more than one person has come to the Hyper Discord channel and said, I want to do routing, but I don't want to use a framework. What do I do? And so far it's been, well, probably just grab Routerify or whatever the other thing is. But if people go out of their way to come into the channel and ask it, then there are people that ask it in their head and just never ask for help. So I've wondered if maybe a little bit more of an advanced routing guide would be useful. I mean, there's a bunch of guides that need to be written. Like how to better integrate Tower, how to use retries, um, how to use load balancing. I think the load balancing stuff in Tower is super powerful, and if you aren't really sure how it works, it's just a bunch of like, whoa, what? Uh, well, that might not necessarily be a problem with the guides, but more, it'd be cool if we could make the load balancing stuff just easier in general, like even without guides, because that stuff's really powerful. I remember seeing this talk of Finagle in Twitter. Finagle? I never pronounce it right. And towards the beginning of the talk, he mentioned one of the biggest problems with Finagle is that uh, Finagle is you don't know the problems that it's solving. So like basically the majority of the talk was these are the problems that exist with running a gigantic service at scale, and at the end, and that's why we made Finagle. So that way all those problems are solved. But we have to teach you what the problems are in the first place before you'll ever bother to even try to use this stuff. Um, I think, and Tower of course is inspired by it, and I think it has a lot of the same problems. Anyways, um, tutorials of some easy hyper Tower util stuff could be cool. Uh, like what are you thinking? If you have some thoughts, I'll jot them down as some ideas. Let's see here. Tutorials for internal hyper stuff. Yeah. But if you have some ideas of what they should be, I can jot them down and try to do them. Perhaps something kind of along the lines of like what Felix is doing. Um, Pink Felix, Punk Felix, PNK Felix, with the Rusty contributor stuff. Just like, hey, so you want to contribute? Here's an easy way to get started. That's kind of why I did the curl debugging thing. Was I wrote up a blog post guide on how to do it, and then thought maybe it'd be helpful to see the pieces that I didn't write about, where you know you build curl and then run the test and then roll your face on the keyboard a bunch until it works. Yeah, that's fine. I still have a note here. Tutorial stuff. Future does not implement default API. Right. So, do you have an async function? Is this because of async trait? Yeah, you might need to wait it. That sounds like a good idea. Yeah, because it looks like you have a future that returns a default API client, and you're probably returning that instead of the default API. You just await it. Mm, when did the function become async? No clue. Um, I think I'm gonna call it. Um, Not that I don't want to keep helping you, Felix, but the voice is starting to feel a little raspy. Vim macros. I've never bothered to learn Vim's macro system. Just never felt like I needed it. Anyways, thanks all for coming to hang out. This is fun. Yeah, I hope to do these kinds of office hours maybe every 2 weeks. Um, hmm, they stopped in November. Well, yeah, uh, pretty much all the contributors were working at Twitter, and then suddenly a million voices cried out, and they weren't, um, which is unfortunate. But anyways, see y'all. Thanks for coming by. How do I turn this off?